Hi, I'm Dave. I'm always buying scrap, and today we're going to teach you how to separate wire. This is coax cable or coaxial television cable, and in my opinion the most valuable part of this is not the cable at all, it's the brass ends. I do recommend cutting them off and selling them as brass. We've peeled back a small section of it to show you the cross section, and that illustrates the problem with this. There's a lot of insulation, and then underneath that you have these very fine fibers of copper that weigh almost nothing, and then there's a very thick inner plastic insulation, and then one filament, one little strand of wire. And the problem with that is I have seen some that are copper, but more often than not that's copper plated steel in there. That's not even copper, and it makes recovering this very cost ineffective and difficult, because you have that dissimilar metal in there, and there's a lot of plastic compared to the copper. There's almost no copper in this whole wire. This is BX cable, and what makes this different than regular standard insulated wire is the metal insulation or the metal jacket that's around it. We've peeled it back for illustration purposes, but it would look like this in its regular form. And in this instance it's galvanized steel, and in some cases it's aluminum. But in either event, what gives this a diminished value compared to regular wire is the dissimilar metal that it's wrapped in. Now, this presents challenges for processing because wire is usually chopped for recovery, and the plastic is blown one way and the copper the other. But now we're dealing with another kind of metal, and that metal is not worth as much as the copper, so it presents a different kind of challenge. Low-grade wire is any insulated wire that has less than a 50% copper recovery ratio. In this case, there's just a very thin little wire inside of the thick insulation. In the case of this harness wire, there's plugs all over it, and there's corrugated plastic and extra plastic sleeves. Christmas tree light wire has little bulbs and extra thick plastic sockets. So it's basically anything that reduces the recovery ratio of the copper compared to the overall weight. That would make it low wire. Insulated wire, also known as 50% insulated wire, some people call it number 2 wire, is any wire where there's 50% ratio of copper to insulation. And here you can see it on the cross section. It's half plastic, half copper. It's a very common form of wire. You'll find it on appliances, lamp cords. You'll find it in houses, extension cords, stuff like that. It's very, very common. "70% insulated wire is what some people call number 1 wire, and in electrician speak it's THHN, is where you'll see 70% copper in relation to the 30% insulation. I've left a piece completely insulated, one partly insulated, or one completely stripped at the end to illustrate the difference. It's usually single strand, not always, but usually. It's very hard. When you bend it, it'll maintain its shape. It's one way to tell. And it recovers at 70% ratio of copper to the overall weight. This is what we call stripping cable. It's called copper cable, insulated copper cable. The technical electrical name for this is MCM, It comes in different sizes. This is 500 MCM. And stripping cable is any cable that is a minimum of 80% copper recovery to the overall weight. And we left the last inch or so of this strip so that you can see the relationship of the copper to the insulation. You can see the insulation is very, very small and the copper is very, very thick. This is burnt wire, and this is different from the bare bright wire. The bare bright wire is very new and shiny, and this is very discolored from the burning process. And we would buy this wire as number 1 wire because it does not have any tin or silver coating on it. Now if it had the tin coating on it, it would be a number 2 copper. And just for the record, we bought this way. We would not burn wire. I don't recommend the process unless it's done properly in an oven that has emissions equipment, because burning wire in the open just emits a lot of toxic fumes into the environment, and it's not good for you to be anywhere near that when you're doing it, or just for the overall health of everybody. It's just not a good thing to do. So, but this is burnt wire, and you can see the difference. This is bare bright wire. Some people call it bare bright. Some people call it bright wire. Really doesn't make a difference what you call it. It could be called stripped cable, stripped wire. It doesn't make a difference. What's important is that you realize that this grade of wire is completely devoid of insulation. It's only the copper that comes out of the wire, not the insulation. And you have to be very careful because some people like to burn wire. But if you burn the wire, it is not bright wire. It is not bare bright wire. It's not. Thank you for watching our informative video. We hope you've learned a lot about wire today.